Hello again, it's MGB here, back with another of my tutorials. What I wanted to show today was just a little bit of work involving bridges and the usage of slopes and slope mods. This actually comes from a user request, and in essence, what I want to show you is how to make a bridge like this so that the slopes that are on either side of the bridge have a sort of optimal look. If you see here, the foundations actually fit nicely into the slopes that are present. And what I've done on one side is I've used a nice even slope to bring the rail down to the low level. And the idea behind that would be you would have some sort of port area perhaps here, and this would be a shipping channel, this stretch of water. Given the height of the bridge, it should be perfectly fine to have a realistic shipping channel, and large ships would be able to pass under without any problems. You see on the other side of the slope, the rail just terminates and comes into the higher ground, and obviously that can go off to wherever you need it to, just to show you the basic principles. What I've also done, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see the main rail connection here is actually on a viaduct, just to give me a little bit of extra height. Again, just to help with the clearance for any ships that are going under this bridge here. So in true Blue Peter style, as you can see, here's one I've made earlier. And rather than demolish this completely and start over from scratch, what I'm going to do is just run you through the basic principles required to put this configuration into place. Now, the easiest first step in these situations is to start at the highest point. So that's going to be the actual bridge, the crossing itself. So let's just mark out a location to put a new bridge crossing in. So if we say on this tile here, make sure we get that lined up correctly on both sides. So I'll just put this little sort of marker in place. And then I'm going to use the hole digger and razor lots that are included in the NAM. Now, there are two types that you can install, but I prefer these auto-destruct ones. As you can see, it's just a simple click and forget operation. I don't need to do anything further. So just put a rail stub on either side of those. One more thing I'm going to do, a little trick that's very useful, is if you pick one of the pedmals and just to the side of those slopes, stick one of those on. This stops the game from undoing any of the work we're trying to do by locking that height for these slopes here. So just to start off with, we want to build our bridge. So we just drag that across. And the bridge we're looking for is a viaduct rail bridge. Those are denoted by this 15.5 meter setting here. And you can also see in the preview that the bridge is actually higher than where we've dragged it. So if I just click accept now, and you'll note that I haven't actually changed the bridge height itself. What I've done is I've manually created the optimal settings for what I want, rather than changing the bridge height setting and hoping the game gets it right, because I'm sorry to tell you, 9 times out of 10 it probably won't. So having got the initial bridge in place, now all we have to do is get our slopes connected up on either side. Just before we do that though, there's one useful tool that I wish to introduce you to if you're not aware of it, and this requires having the extra Cheats.dll installed, which was made by Buggi. If you have that, just press Ctrl and X and you'll see a little box appear in the top left corner. Just right click in that box and a list of options come up, and the one we're looking for here is terrain query. Hit enter. It might not appear that anything's happened. When you now select the main query tool, see hovering over a tile is giving us a set of coordinates. Now where this is useful is the Y coordinate here is the height of each section. You can see the height of each bridge approach is 297.7 in this case, and that just means that we know both the left and the right side of the bridge are at the exact same height. That's quite an important thing to be sure of when working with bridges. Again, the game will auto terraform anything that isn't exact, and this can lead to imperfect slopes on either side. So what we now should have is a bridge which is not only raised by the initial 30 meters of the slope, but by another 15.5 meters from the viaduct. So this gives us a 45.5 meter clearance. And this is basically ideal for large ships to pass under cleanly, which is why you obviously need to have a port at quite a low level so that it will work with the water that's here. But at the same time, if you're going to have a bridge crossing that area, usually it will actually block large ships from going through. So this is really an exercise in realism. So let's start now with these slopes. And the first thing you'll notice, if I just try and simply drag the rail, the game will give me an error and won't allow me to do that. And that's because we're so much height difference between the slope we've built here and where we want to go that the game cannot normalize that automatically. So again, what we have to do is manually make that happen. Now I have a slope mod installed by BRF, or Big Red Fish. That's the Big Red Fish Tunnel and Slope mod. There are plenty of different slope mods out there, and the key difference between them is some are more or less restrictive than others, so everyone will have their own preferences in that regard. The reason I use the BRF one is because it has a nice balance, I think, between the difficulty of using it and the realism of the slopes that it creates. So rather than using the rail tool to directly draw this slope down, what I'm going to do is start off by selecting the street tool, and you'll see it's quite happy to give me a slope with the street tool. Let's remove that quickly because it's going to be in the way in a moment. We could now drag the rail out by a couple tiles, but you see it's still not going as far as we need it to. And what we're going to do is just build the slope piece by piece by using different networks. So I'll switch to the L rail now. And that's not going to work either, so I maybe have to go back one. Let's try using the road network first. There we go. And essentially, you'll see at what point the game is no longer able to automatically do this for us. And so we just switch between, in this case, the street, the road, and the elevated rail until the game will allow us to put the slope in place that we want. And that's really the easiest way to do it, rather than any sort of mass terraforming, which is prone to error. Now at this point we still don't have the correct slope for the rail, but I'm pretty confident we can start to drag it out. And you'll see as you get closer and closer to the ground, you'll find it's easier for us to build these slopes. So now I can just go straight with the L rail tool. I don't have to muck around with the street and road in between. So once we've got it going, it's actually quite an easy process. And there we are. There's a nice slope going down away from the bridge. Just very quickly stop at this point, because as you see, what I've done previously is put a tunnel in, because at some point, if you're going to loop this round, you do need to cross underneath the viaduct that you've made. Because of the height differential, there's no neat and tidy way to do this. So a tunnel is really the logical approach here. So what I'm going to do is just drag alongside for 3 tiles, as you see here, and I'm going to delete that 3x3 area. Now this should give me sufficient setup to draw a tunnel through, like so. And you'll note that the reason for those extra tiles on the edge is because the tunnel needs to actually cut into the embankment that we've got. So just to tidy that up, chuck a couple stubs in here. And although that's not perfect, it's a reasonably neat solution for what we're doing. As you can see, the game will fight you at this point a little bit. And there we go. That's got what we actually wanted in the first place, I think. No, just one more tile there. There we go. So that would be how we would get the tunnel to go under there. So that's your basic slope going down. At this point, we're going to switch to the right side. And again, just going to remove a few tiles from here. Now here, what I actually did is kept this fairly straight and then transitioned to the higher land that's already there. So rather than muck around with dragging one network after another, we can just go right back to our hole digger eraser lot, and every couple tiles we'll just place that down, and we'll get a nice 30-meter high embankment. And see, even for this just one tile gap where we haven't done that, it will not automatically connect. But again, we can just get around that by switching very quickly the street, put a couple stubs in, and now that is absolutely straight and doing what we want it to do. So just keep going along here. I might need to make some adjustments because that, as you can see, is just whenever it is dragged as opposed to using stubs, it will try and auto level the terrain. So here we're going to come along just until we start to cut into the land on the other side. Remove 2 or 3 stubs once you've done that, and then this time we need a 15.5 meter razor piece, and that's because the transition from rail to viaduct rail is 15.5 meters, and that's about the ideal point here for that transition. So we'll take 2 or 3 from that side and keep going until we've got, I think that's about right there, a nice cut for the transition. And if you just go to the rail puzzle pieces here, it's the viaduct rail pieces, using shift and tab twice to go back, and we find the on-slope piece here. As you can see, so this is the point where it will just transition to a normal rail network, and that's just utilizing the slope of the land that's already there. We want to connect, there we go. And that's where we'll transition to our viaduct. So if I just complete that rail there, back to the puzzle pieces, this time tab twice and the straight. And you see what I'm doing is just plopping them on top of the existing rail. Now the nice thing about doing it that way, it will auto orientate the pieces we're trying to use. So in essence, I'm just running along, click, 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 and very quickly we have a section of viaduct. So you see that's very easy to put that into place. Once more, as we did on the other side with the rail tunnel, just have 3 extra tiles dragged out on either side, and again we can put a road tunnel into place and just clean up the edges on either side. As you can see, it's all very simple, not necessarily again the neatest tunnel. You might find in this case you could use some flips, but I don't think there are any flips under rail viaduct pieces, but I might stand to be corrected. At this point this side's done, so this is literally just a temporary ped mold. We'll delete that, and we'll do the same on this side. So as you can see, on one side we have the slope, on the other side we just have a level section, so that's really quite easy. And so on to the last part of this process. What I've had to do, because of the height difference coming down here, although 30 meters might not sound like it's very high, in order to get a realistic kind of slope, it is necessary to have quite a long transition. And that's why I've used this sort of 270-degree loop system, as this allows me to gradually get the slope coming down from the bridge and transition into ground level quite neatly. Where I've put these smooth curve pieces in, I've actually flattened the land completely. So if we imagine we were going to put the curve in here, so we just, at the end of our slope, switch to using stubs again, and if I grab the piece we're going to use for that curve, it's the 3x6 as you can see here. So because it's 3x6, we know that we need the same 3x6 area to be flattened here. Delete those, and then place our 3x6 curve in that space. And we would do the same on the other side here. Once you've got the final piece in, you can just start dragging once more and continuing the slope going downwards. So I think you get the idea without me having to build it completely. And once more, as soon as we're at a sensible level, I've made a slight change in the elevation of the terrain here and transitioned that again from the viaduct back to a normal rail system. And then it just has another 15.5 meters to travel around this bend. And I think you'll find we're back at flat land somewhere around here. So in essence, anything over this side is going to be pretty flat, and that the area of any port or low-level rail systems that you might require